The bar was
That's
loud
time.
with laughter, music, and
What did you
clinking
say, Richard?
glasses, but the noise fell
You
into a
think this is
tense
funny?
silence the moment two black men walked in. They were twins, dressed simply, their presence commanding attention they didn't ask for. Within minutes, the suspicious glances began. A bartender whispered, a group of officers at the corner table shifted uneasily, their eyes narrowing. What no one in that bar knew was that these twins carried more authority in their blood than anyone else in the room. But that night, prejudice would blind the cops, and what happened when the truth came out left the entire bar frozen in shock. The twins, Marcus and Malachi, had grown up inseparable, facing the world side by side. From childhood, they learned resilience, the kind forged in neighborhoods where opportunities were scarce and judgment was constant. What the world never expected was how far they would rise. Marcus had carved his path through discipline and unbreakable focus, becoming a captain in the Navy. Malachi, equally relentless, chose the grueling road of elite warfare, climbing to commander of the SEALs. But their ranks, their medals, their sacrifices, all of it remained hidden that night. To the world in that bar, they were just two black men daring to step into a space where they weren't wanted. The bar itself was a local hangout, filled with uniformed officers off duty, their badges tucked away but their swagger intact. These weren't strangers to suspicion, they were men who thrived on authority, even when it wasn't theirs to wield. And the moment the twins walked in, tension simmered beneath the surface. Marcus and Malachi didn't come looking for trouble. They wanted a quiet night, a chance to share a drink, to laugh, to exist without the weight of their titles. But prejudice never waits for permission. All it takes is one assumption, one whisper, and suddenly an ordinary night can spiral into a confrontation that strips bare the truth of how people see you. And that night, the truth was about to hit the bar like a thunderclap. The officers at the corner watched the twins like predators circling prey. One leaned back in his chair, muttering loud enough for others to hear. A few chuckled, others glanced toward the bartender, who looked uncomfortable but complicit. Soon the whispers grew into murmurs, and the murmurs into postures, the kind that signaled trouble was inevitable. Marcus and Malachi ignored it at first. Years of training had taught them restraint, discipline, and above all, patience. But patience has limits, and prejudice knows no boundaries. When the twins approached the bar to order, the bartender hesitated. His hands trembled slightly, his eyes darting toward the officers. "Don't serve them," one of the cops muttered from across the room. Another officer smirked, adding fuel to the fire, his voice dripping with arrogance. The tension thickened. A group of locals shifted uncomfortably, sensing the injustice but staying silent. The weight of authority, even when abused, has a way of silencing good people. Then it escalated. Two officers stood, approaching the twins with false smiles and sharp undertones. They blocked the path, making their presence loom larger than necessary. To them Marcus and Malachi weren't brothers, soldiers or leaders. They were targets, two men who in their eyes didn't belong. The insults started small, wrapped in feigned politeness, but quickly escalated to open hostility. Their voices grew louder, their stance more aggressive, until the entire bar turned to watch. And then came the threat. One officer leaned in, his voice low but laced with menace. He told them they were in the wrong place, and if they didn't leave, they'd be thrown out, or worse. His hand rested on his holster, the weight of it meant to intimidate. But intimidation was wasted on men who had stared death in the face. Marcus and Malachi stayed calm, their expressions unshaken. They had seen this before. Different faces, same prejudice. What the officers didn't know was that they weren't provoking just anyone. They were standing toe-to-toe with men who had commanded troops, executed missions under fire, and led soldiers into battles that shaped nations. The bar held its breath, and then, as if destiny itself timed the reveal, the tide shifted. Just as the officer's hand hovered dangerously near his weapon, the door opened. A breeze cut through the tension as another group entered, a handful of Navy personnel, still in partial uniform. Their eyes widened when they saw Marcus and Malachi. The silence shattered. One of them snapped to attention instinctively, addressing the twins with the kind of reverence only earned through respect. The words cut through the bar like a blade. "Captain, Commander." The officers froze. The bar froze. Even the bartender paled, his hands shaking at the sudden shift. The truth landed like a thunderclap. These weren't just two men, they were leaders of the very forces the officers claimed to honor. The twins' ranks carried more authority than anyone else in the room combined. The irony was suffocating. The very men mocked and threatened were the ones who had earned the deepest respect through sacrifice, service, and blood. The officers' arrogance collapsed in an instant. Their smirks vanished, replaced with disbelief and fear. The realization of what they had done, threatening a Navy captain and a SEAL commander, left them speechless. Marcus and Malachi didn't need to raise their voices. They didn't need to retaliate. Their silence was enough. Their presence was enough. Their presence was enough. And the truth, now laid bare, condemned the officers more powerfully than any confrontation could. The bar never forgot that night. Word spread quickly, whispered first among locals, then carried into the wider community. The story wasn't about two black men walking into a bar. It was about how prejudice nearly blinded people to the truth of who stood before them. The officers involved faced consequences, not because Marcus or Malachi demanded it, but because their actions had been witnessed by too many, their arrogance exposed under the weight of undeniable truth. Authority abused in ignorance could no longer be ignored. But the twins didn't dwell on revenge. They left quietly, as they had entered. To them the night wasn't about proving themselves. They had nothing left to prove. It was a reminder that no matter how high you rise, there will always be those who judge you by the surface. Yet the strength lies not in fighting every battle, but in carrying yourself with dignity when ignorance tries to drag you down. For the people in that bar, the lesson burned deep. You never know who you're standing against. Never know the story behind the face you mock. And for those who witnessed, silence was no longer an option. They had seen how quickly prejudice could turn dangerous, and how easily it could have spiraled out of control. For Marcus and Malachi, it was another chapter in a lifetime of resilience. Their bond as brothers, their rise through the ranks, their unshakable resolve, those things could never be stripped away. The uniforms they wore weren't just fabric, they were stitched with sacrifice, loss and honor. And for everyone who hears their story, the question remains, how many times has prejudice blinded us from seeing the truth about someone? How many leaders, heroes, and human beings have been reduced to stereotypes in a single glance? That night in the bar wasn't just about two brothers. It was about all of us, about the dangers of judgment, the power of resilience, and the truth that respect should never depend on what someone looks like. Because in the end, authority isn't proven by arrogance, it's earned through sacrifice. And the greatest leaders often carry their power quietly, waiting for the world to see past its own blindness.